All right, you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I
Oh,
hear you very
okay.
well.
Well, we agreed to tackle the question of evil and the way psychology deals with that question. Modern psychology, not Aristotelian psychology, let's say, which is, of course, an element of what we would call his philosophy. Um, but psychology as an independent discipline, investigation, inquiry. How does it deal with the problem of evil? If you have immediate thoughts, we'll perhaps start with those. If uh, you wish to have um, subtitles, as it were, to our discussion, I can provide that.
Uh, no very specific thoughts. For me, evil is uh,
Not a
no
problem.
substance.
That's it.
It has to do with it has to do with sensibilities and with possibilities.
Okay.
It has to do with being hurt. Humans can be hurt, animals can be hurt,
Yes, but I
and
can be hurt
what
by a
hurts
stone.
is evil.
I can be hurt by a
Yes,
stone.
yeah,
On the other, I mean that is
yes,
Epicurean. I can be hurt by a stone, and I don't call that evil. I can be hurt by a, a very mean, um, hateful person, yeah, and I say, well, that's evil. Yeah, um, there is a difference that is significant. I think. Do you account for that
be, be,
difference, or do you say that it's just in my imagination?
yes. You suppose that there is an evil intention if you call another person evil,
Well,
but there
take
mustn't be
somebody
an
during the
evil
war. Forget
intention.
about the. Let's not get into intentions for a second. Let's
Yes,
stick to the good sensus communis, the common sense, right? And say, which is, yes, the imagination, nevertheless. Um, it is not the last word, but it is a fair starting point. And let's say that um, there is a guy who is out without any care for others, okay, and just for whatever reason, for moved by whatever impulse, whatever irrational passion, he goes out um, and in the road, in the street at night, um, and starts ripping people's throats, and Jack the Ripper, you know, or raping, killing children, whatnot. Doesn't matter. He doesn't care. Um, is there something evil about that, or is it just something that we can understand rationally? We can dissect. Perhaps we can study the hormonal output of the person. We can look at his background and say, well, there's been such and such influence on this person, and it was inevitable, unavoidable. He would have acted that way. That's the way things go. It's a matter of chemical imbalance, and evil is not really an objective matter. Science does not concern itself with that problem. Um, yeah, it's not real. Yeah, what do you say about that?
it it is real. Because it's real for the persons involved.
But yeah, I'm not
Uh,
involved,
it
but
there
I look and I say, geez, I say, I'm not involved personally, but I look and I say, there's something evil about this. This is clearly related to the problem, I think, of injustice, right? Is there such a thing as objective injustice in the world? It goes, then that brings us back, of course, to the problem of natural right. Is there a right by nature? In other words, some things are just not right. Perhaps if we were in the jungle, we'd say, hey, everything goes. It's okay for the snake to, for the boa constrictor to swallow up its prey. It's okay. The prey hadn't noticed the aggressor. Yeah, but that's life. But when it comes to human reality, a human setting where there is, I think, what we call freedom, and we have consciousness, awareness of right and wrong, bad, good and evil, whatever, however we want to understand that, I think that there's a point where we all can agree that certain things, or do we look at them, and I'm not involved, but I look at it and I say, geez, that's evil. Man is capable of evil, of injustice, whereas in the jungle, no. It's okay. We don't call the monkey evil or unjust, but a man is capable of evil. I mean, I think that is the common sense standpoint, yeah? We sort of all have that sense. Then, of course, you can have a specialized knowledge that tells you, no, actually, it's not that way. It's actually only in your head.
I absolutely don't want to say that everything is allowed. I agree with the idea of natural rights.
Right, I meant it in the singular, but yeah.
Yes, natural right. I agree completely. But that doesn't mean for me that someone has to have an evil intention. People are self-concerned, self-related. They have their interest, their drives, their appetites, their greed, and
okay.
We call inclinations evil from the outside, but they don't have to be felt like that.
Yes. Well, you're speaking about inclinations and intentions. I was not, right? I was speaking about the whole situation, right?
Yes.
That's what's occurring, the reality. And intentions can be extrapolated, can be abstracted out of that reality. And we can talk about the intentions of whatever atrocious person, yeah? Mao Zedong, what were his intentions? And we can dissect them, we can analyze them, we can write a book on his intentions. And of course, that's an abstraction from that reality. What has occurred, is something we could say, from the standpoint, again, of common sense, that is unjust, that is outright evil. And components of them that can be extrapolated, right? Or, of course, you could say, well, this guy came and he had his own intentions, but that's sort of an abstraction. How do these intentions come about? Well, they probably originate from another nucleus, another whole reality. You see what I'm saying? So we have to go back to that wholeness, that integrality, that of reality to, and is that wholeness something that is fractured, that contains that problem of evil, even before we start speaking about intentions? Perhaps we all want good, or perhaps with St. Paul we could say that I know what is good and yet I do evil. He doesn't say actually I intend to do what is evil. Yes, that I do it. He did something evil and unjust.
Yes.
I mean, it's, now I know what is good, so perhaps my intentions are good, but I do evil. And then I say, why? Why doesn't the monkey do evil? Is it knowledge of the good that makes me do evil? Is that because that's what seem to be the difference between the human being and the monkey?
Mm.
The monkey doesn't know, and so he doesn't do evil. We know what is good, and then we do evil. Is there something wrong? Is there something evil with knowledge of the good?
No,
No.
it isn't. For me, what is right isn't often isn't evident. We have
Yeah.
to engage to learn to be right, to be good,
Yes.
and
You mean we're not all
it
right? Do you
sorry.
mean that? Do you mean that we're not all right? That each and every one of it is not already right just because he believes that he's right?
Like that. We live in situations where it is often difficult to do the right thing, and where it
Ah,
isn't obvious what is to do. We have to be concerned with the situations we live in. We have to learn to behave adequately to the situations. There
as good
there
soldiers.
is
Yes.
what
As
sorry.
good soldiers. As good soldiers.
Soldiers. So
Yes. When you're on the battlefield, you have to see the situation and
yeah,
respond accordingly.
and life is like that. It's often a battlefield, isn't it?
Yes, clearly. Challenge. But that is the challenge of freedom.
So what I'd like to say is the idea of natural right makes sense for me, but this right isn't preordained. There is no pre-established harmony in nature. There is no pre-established harmony. We have to develop and to create what is what can be seen as right and as adequate to situations. It's always specific. It has to be found
Okay, so then
what is
you're
best to
denying that
do.
there's such a thing as natural right in the classical sense of the term.
Enjoy
That,
it.
it seems to me that you are thereby denying that there's any such thing as natural right, since there's nothing pre-established, nothing that we don't create, yeah, and no value that we don't create.
It has to do how we understand temporality.
But you're getting sophisticated on me. I was staying on the plane of common sense. Is there something of the order of good and evil that we do not create? Yes or no? I mean, create
Yes,
in time, yeah? Yeah, I mean, temporally, you know, something that is ontologically more fundamental than our daily choices, or even collective choices for that matter. Is there such a thing?
what is yes, yes. For me,
Well,
there's such a thing, namely that good is what furthers growth and life and development, the uh, diversity of being. All this is good, and evil is what destroys, what hinders. So this is the
are you,
difference for me.
is this a euphemism for survival? Growth. Growth. I mean, plants grow. Men,
Yes,
why don't we just keep growing physically? Why don't I don't know. I mean, why doesn't our knowledge, is it Faustian here?
it's
Is there
not.
a point where growth is can be a problem? Is not I mean, it's not natural, yeah.
This isn't about physical size.
Yes,
It's about diversity, diversification.
but you have many insects. How does that help me?
It's part of life on the earth, and we depend on them. They do a lot for us.
Okay, for us,
Yes.
so we are more important. It is for us, not us for them.
Oh, it's not. It's just our point of view. They.
But then you're saying that there is no natural right. If it's everything is our point of view, what about this growth business? Isn't that your point of view? Diversity, praising diversity, growth, development,
Yeah.
however you want to, if you like those terms, fine, stick to them. Isn't this your point of view? Or the point of view of your species, as it were, even if it were the case, yeah? Assuming it were the case.
It
Insects,
encompasses my
some
point.
roach might disagree. A roach might disagree. He might think that it doesn't matter. Or an eagle, for that matter, might disagree, might say no. All I need is rats or a vulture. I don't care what kind of dead body you give me. I'll go for it. I don't need diversification, growth, and all the other business that you human being care about. Well,
Yes.
or you just
Wh-
representing the standpoint of a human being living today, perhaps 100 years ago, I mean 200 years ago, obviously 300 years ago, the common man, or 400 years ago, I don't know, they would have disagreed entirely with this proposition. I mean, Nietzsche might agree, but perhaps not. I mean, certainly not other people. Yeah. How do you account for that? How do you account for the objection that that suggests that your view of what is right is relative to you, to your species, to your background, etc. The relativization of it. How do you object to that objection? How do you counter it?
I don't object.
So it's relative. It's
Yeah.
what you just said is relative to you, to your, not to your
Yeah.
species, because within the species many people disagree. So
Yes.
it's relative to you.
That people have other thoughts is no objection.
Yes, but that what is right by nature is growth, development, and what was the other thing?
Diversity.
Diversity. That is a proposition that, I mean, either it's universal, either it's really real, true, it corresponds to what is really right by nature. That is to say that it's independent of our wish. There is something in the order of things that accounts for the validity, the universal validity of that proposition. Or it's just something that you made up to account for what you don't know, for something else, yeah? For injustice, for a problem that you might have. And so you say, hey, you know what? The answer to all of our problems is growth, diversity, and development. Growth and diversity. How do you counter that objection? Is it relative or not?
I defend it as what I have a right.
You defend it as?
Um, as the sorry.
You defend it
I,
as?
I defend this relative position.
Yes.
I defend this relative position as the opinion that I have come to see as adequate to reality.
Okay, but you
It
have
is
an
my
opinion.
view.
It is your
Yes,
view. But
yes.
that doesn't mean anything then. Because if you can't defend it, you say,
For me, it means something.
okay, but my mama told me something else.
Yes,
It's,
it's your mama.
so what?
Why not?
And my daddy told me something else. So which one is better?
It
Clearly,
doesn't matter.
we're not speaking about this, right? What is you know, scientific psychology, insofar as it raises claims to objectivity, to being scientific and not just a bundle of opinions concocted at home, and reflecting personal backgrounds and family histories. Insofar as it understands itself as a serious discipline, psychology confronts the problem of evil and of injustice, and thus also right, what is not right. And my concern is that it is deflating the problem of evil to insignificance, to the point where it becomes utterly insignificant. Now, I asked you, how do you account for it? Well, basically, you appeal to these ideals, shall we say, these principles of growth, development, diversity. Fine. Now, somebody might come along and say, well, these terms reflect a 20th century, 21st century, whatever, bourgeois, Western capitalist bias, and ideology, and they're not really universal. Well, you want to leave it at that and accept that and say, yes, you're right, actually. And so perhaps you are faced with the possibility that growth and development and diversity are not really a permanent standard. Tomorrow, something could happen to make you change your mind in principle. And you might realize that, hey, you know what? That's not the point of it all. And there's some things that are evil, even if they are conducive to development, however that is understood, growth, however that is understood, and diversity, which you sort of understand. Diversity, again, is suggesting, if I am not mistaken, in the minds of those who appeal to it, that all entities that make up for this diversity are on the same level, and that therefore we shouldn't have more so-called wise men compared to idiots, because every person has the same right to a word, so we all should have our 5 minutes of glory, and we can just spread them out equally, so that Socrates has his 3 minutes, Hitler has his 3 minutes, Genghis Khan has his 3 minutes, the moron, the drunk in the street has his 3 minutes. We all have our 3 minutes. That's diversity. On another account, diversity that is significant would suggest that we deserve to have Socrates here, this other guy here, and then Jack the Ripper, we don't even need to bother listening to him. We don't necessarily have to put him at the stake, but see, that's diversity, on a hierarchical diversity on another account, which I won't hide it in any way. I think it's much more reasonable than the former type that I described of diversity, which seems to me to be a scam, an outright farce. What do we show children in school in terms of images? Do we show Picasso, Botticelli? I don't know. What are we showing them? Diversity. But since there's so much crap going on today, and I'm not, without apologies, I say this, so much crap. If you have everything lined up in, without questions of value, you end up relegating the good to a little tiny corner. And in the meantime, you had almost a whole day spent looking at this, all these pieces of garbage. So do you have a problem with that? Is that, you see? What does psychology stand for? As a discipline, as a serious discipline, not as mama's discipline, the one that my great uncle taught me, but as a serious discipline. What does it stand for? What does it have to teach us about the problem of evil? How do we confront evil? How do we confront injustice? How do we relate to the problem of right?
Psychology teaches us how behavior, how human stance toward things comes into being. It helps us to understand motives and to deal better with difficult behavior. But this is at first this hasn't for me to do with evil.
Psychology does not deal with the problem of evil.
Yes, it teaches us how to better deal with difficult behavior, sometimes to constrain violence, but not always.
Okay.
It can help to see better what to do in which situation.
Okay, but you brought in, you brought in, before I lose track of them, you brought in 3 terms: violence, better, and something else. Anyway, terms that presuppose something as good and something as evil.
Yes.
If you say violence to what? Violence to nature presupposes an understanding of nature as good, that's something that should not be violated. When you say better, that every time you say better, that presupposes the good. When you say difficult, that was the 3rd term. Difficult suggests that difficult is not good, but difficult behavior. Bad, evil, bad. So it presupposes something bad. Is it difficult? So is everybody? Socrates' behavior is difficult. He's not well integrated in a society of hypocrites. He is difficult for them. Does that make him bad or following evil? Is it integration that you seek? Is it integration that psychology seeks? And then integration into what? Into an evil society? Is there such a thing? How does that behavior form? Does it form in a bubble, in vitro, or does it form vis-a-vis these 2 problems, the society on the one hand and fundamental realities on another?
It works out compromises.
Compromises?
This is what yes. For you, Socrates is a hero, and
yes.
he was outstanding in his time.
No, even in my time. In his time, he was depreciated, and he is depreciated in my time, but he is outstanding in any time as far as I'm concerned.
This whole picture of Socrates is also a construction of Plato and of Xenophon a bit.
That's besides the point.
I think
what they're describing as a man, I can relate to readily in my life, and I can see how a man can live that way in concrete terms, and I honor and respect that way of life.
Yes, I don't mind that.
I think it's heroic.
On the other side, I think the sophists with whom he quarreled weren't idiots either. They
No,
were.
I didn't say they were. I say that they ultimately don't know what they're talking about, and that the position they incarnate is not something that I respect, and I don't consider them in the least heroic. Whereas I consider him to be
It wasn't.
a hero.
It wasn't heroic, but I wonder if Socrates wanted to be heroic.
That's besides the point. I don't think he was trying to be a hero. I don't think he was trying to be a hero, but I think that he was. Yeah. I know other men who have been heroes, who have lived heroically, without trying to be heroic. That wasn't their whole point. Yeah. They chose the heroic life, but not just because they wanted to look heroic or, fit the bill, but just because they recognized certain way of life as preferable to any other, as better, as best.
I doubt that. For me, Socrates wasn't as outstanding in his time.
What do you mean by in his time?
His figure was built up after.
His what was built up?
His figure was built up to superhuman proportions.
I don't know. First of all, I don't think it's superhuman because from personal experience. Secondly, that's besides the point. Whether it was built up, was he an historical figure? That kind of question, for me, is meaningless. Is the model of life, is the persona, the character, Socrates, as we receive it for Plato, Xenophon, perhaps Cicero, and others in their whole Platonic tradition, sometimes divinized, but generally speaking, quite human. Is it realistic? Is it something that you can make sense of, and something that is commensurate to your life experience? And I would say yes, absolutely. So it's irrelevant whether it was, what is Raskolnikov, character who lived. Did Jesus live as an historical? That's besides the point. Yeah. I don't recall. I don't think of Socrates as superhuman, but as fully human. One could argue that Jesus Christ in the Gospels is superhuman, although the Christian tradition would reject that proposition and say that no, he was human, and then there's a divine element to the human. He was fully human, and the fully human reflects the divine within the human. And I'll say, okay, that's commensurate to my experience. That makes sense. And if you ask me if Jesus Nazarenus, if he lived in such and such a place at such and such a time, is that significant to me? Was he born on December 25th, the day of the sun god, or I don't know. Because is it significant? No. I could care less. That's besides the point. There was a character in the book. Strike me as unrealistic. Is he commensurate? In my experience, that's more significant. So here, yeah, I'm not sure why we brought up Socrates, but yes, I do consider him heroic, and he did face the question of right, and he did face, of course, the problem of evil. Now, let me shake things a bit and say that something that I've been writing about, probably keep writing about and discussing, namely two attitudes vis-a-vis evil. And we see that the ancients didn't really talk about, in classical literature, pre-moderns, however you want to look at it, they didn't really discuss the problem of evil very much. Yeah, in the Middle Ages, they want to discuss everything, so they have discussions, but they're very formal, and today we would call them abstract. That's why the moderns came up with existentialism. Existentialism was to be the science of existence as opposed to the science of being, not the science of eternal things or beautiful things, but the science of an existence that is drenched in what we ordinarily regard as evil, dark stuff. Yeah, the others are hell. Yeah, that kind of vision, that Sartrean vision, and the whole 20th century existentialist atmosphere from Kafka and so forth. There's exploration, Les Fleurs du Mal, Baudelaire. This whole exploration of evil was, I think, understood to be something novel, something that the ancients don't give us. And I think it's indebted very much to certain Christian reading, or reading of Christianity, on account of which Christianity shows us something that the ancients did not give us in the exploration of course, of the presence of the divine, not in the clouds, not in the depths of the soul, but within the ordinary life. So providence is brought up and magnified beyond Ciceronian discussions that were, however, strategically burnt by medieval monks as being something that might undermine our representation of the ancients, of what they knew, what they did not know, and what they were aware of. So the ancients really, overall, did not say much that troubles us about evil. In fact, we look at it as being sometimes trivial, some banal, and so we explored it much more. The moderns explore it much more, and I think that we can look at this in apologetic terms for the ancients and say that there's a good reason why that is the case. And the reason, and I would invite you to respond to what I'm about to say. The reason is quite good one. Namely, that for the ancients, and it's quite obvious if you think about it, for the ancients, science is science. We have understood it. We have been told this, taught this. We have read this. It is the science of immutables, episteme. Yes, in Greek terms. It's the science of things that don't change. And of course, evil things change. It is science is about being, ultimately the science of being as such. Hence, science for the medievals. For Socrates, is the on is that which actually is what you're really. What is that? The that is ultimately the being of discussion. What about evil? Well, for them, knowledge doesn't deal with evil. Very simply put, there's no such thing as knowledge of evil. There's knowledge of good, and what about evil? They don't. Are they not aware of evil and injustice? Sure, but for them, you don't tackle the problem of evil with knowledge. You tackle it thanks to knowledge. You need knowledge of the good to shun evil. And how do you shun evil? That's the problem of freedom bound to the good. Freedom pursues the good. And what's freedom pursuing the good? Virtue. Virtue is their answer to the problem of evil, not knowledge. So they're not writing a book on evil because it is your job, my job, to tackle the problem of evil. And that tackling is not a matter of knowledge. Nobody can teach you how to do it, although you can certainly rely on knowledge, and you're going towards knowledge of the good as communion with the good. But that is a problem of evil, that you tackle through virtue, and nobody can teach you that virtue. Nobody can, you can't read it in a book and say, if I read this book, that'll tell me how to be virtuous, and that'll solve my problem. No, it is the same issue with the relation between knowledge and freedom. It is your freedom. So it is your challenge to go on the battlefield, and yes, knowledge will help you, but it's not going to be knowledge of evil, knowledge of good, see? Of immutable. And that is going to be your anchor. As Ulysses' mast on his ship is going to be tied to it. Now he has to face the mermaids. Nobody can face them for you. Now, for the moderns, there's no such thing as episteme, pure science in Aristotle's terms. So what do you, never mind Plato, because Aristotle as a Platonist is out of the window, but Plato all the more. So what do we have? Well, as we learn with Machiavelli, good and evil are necessarily intertwined. So we can come up with an abstraction of good as a conventional abstraction. Yes, we can stipulate if something is good or not. But really, if you look at reality, they're all mixed up. It's the same thing. It's a big chaos of sorts. So what do? We need strategies. We need a machine a mechanism. We have to discover the mechanism to be able to work things out, to manipulate, to get to, as alchemists, have a profitable, as it were, mixture of good and evil in the interest, what interest? In the interest of a good? No, that's a contradiction. We cannot say. So there's impulse towards the unknown. Not virtue, but kind of machine or a mechanical device or stratagem or mechanism, something of that sort, is the key to the problem of evil. Not freedom, not virtue. And so we have self-help books that deal with the problem of evil, how to get rid of it. Here are the 10 easy steps. I'm talking about the most vulgar and flatulent literature that we have today, but you can go on higher realms. But nevertheless, it's the same idea. We have the plan, right? The positivist attitude. We'll give you the rules, we'll give you the scheme, and we'll figure it out. The politicians, the realpolitik, right? They have a new protocol that will help us solve the problem. We get the scientists and we'll all figure it out. So they have the scheme for everything, chart, the computers will help us So all of this is the key to addressing the problem of evil and injustice. What do we do? Was an American president who says, what is school? And somebody asked him, what are the problems with education in America? He says, well, we need more schools, more teachers, and more computers. Got it all figured out. Quantified. The quantification of everything is integral to that. I think that was Obama. Now, is that successful? Or does that lead to Brave New World? Does that help us understand the problem of evil, or does it help us sort of eclipse it and blind us to it? You have thoughts about that?
What I notice is that for the ancients, you move completely inside their ideology.
Ideology, a nice, beautiful modern term.
Yes. You speak about their freedom and their virtue and their values.
No, I don't speak about their values, but okay.
Let's yes, call freedom and virtue. So, but
what they praise.
Don't you don't speak about the institutions they move in, about the slavery, the role of slaves in their society and their economy.
Yes, as opposed to the role of slaves in our society, you mean? As opposed to the role of slavery in our society, you mean?
To the role of slaves in their society.
And what about our society?
Yes.
What about the role of slaves in our
there are slaves in our societies, actually, and yes, we have to confront this question.
Yes, and did they not? Did Aristotle not confront the question of slavery by saying that, look, you cannot solve that problem? Huh? You cannot solve it. There's no strategy, there's no policy, political policy to solve the problem of slavery for the simple fact that there is a human condition that cannot be overcome. I mean, there's human nature, and he's confronted with this recognition, and he accepts this as a situation that nobody can overcome. Namely, that most people are slaves by nature. In other words, they have a slavish mentality, mindset, or nature, however you want to put it, for whatever reason. For whatever reason, I don't think we've been able to overcome that in the least. And in fact, I think that we've mixed the cards up so that nobody can speak about it publicly in an intelligent manner. You understand what I mean?
I don't agree. This isn't our nature that many are slaves. Absolutely not.
No, I don't mean that it is our nature that many are slaves. It is a human situation. And if you just look at, if you want to take a modern look at things, glance from the height of the sort of semi-gods, fly up in the sky and look at the scenario throughout the century, you will see that most people are easily duped because they want to be duped. They want to be flattered. They sell their freedom in exchange for slavery. Take care of me. Who am I to trust? Just take care of me. Here is my freedom. I don't want it. Just give me something. Give me my food. Give me my circus and my bread. And that's good enough for me. Who needs freedom when you have circus and bread? Is this not the human condition? Realistically, who is realistic? The ancients or the moderns? The moderns, I think the early moderns at least acknowledge that, but they figure, yeah, but maybe we can change that. We can improve upon that. At least we can make them work. We can make these guinea pigs work towards the establishment of a better society. Please, Rupert. Yes?
I don't want to give up on this question,
Yes.
but I have no good answer. You have good arguments.
You know, are we still waiting
This is the
for
problem.
the wonderful kingdom of ends? Are we still Kantians, or are we still having, or have we given up on that? Oh, we should hope, because hope is our last resort. It's the last thing we have. Yes, but rational hope or irrational hope? Hope in the face of despair, hope in the face of the absence of reason. Oh God, look at all this, what has been going on up till now. And just when we thought we were getting better, we got worse. And therefore we should have hope. What? Why? Hope in what? In the Kantian dream? On what grounds? Because now we have TV and cell phones? On what grounds? Are people genuinely freer now because they have mediation? Because they live with more mediation? More computers means more mediation, meaning at a farther removal from reality. More repression, more psychosis, more whatever you want to call it. More disintegration of the human being. More confusion. Oops. Is this a ground for hope? No, but we have to hope anyway, precisely because there's no ground. So that seems to me to be stupid, absurd, stupid. Why do you want to hope without reason? Oh, does this remind you of Christianity? It is a farce of Christianity. It's you know, I hope you agree that this is it's a spoof of Christianity. There was a reason. It
Hope
was
is
just a
no.
reason that was hidden, but there was a reason for Christianity. Yes? But here, there's no hidden reason. It is precisely the absence of God that should convince us to move forward. Why? Are we doing any better with evil with respect to the ancients? Oh, but they had slaves. Yes, sure. What's changed? The worst forms of slavery that our history books speak of is a modern form of slavery. Roman
This is true.
slavery was not the worst. Was not the worst.
Mhm. This is true, surely.
So I don't know. Who is dealing with the problem of evil more successfully to the extent that you can deal with it? Where do we turn for models? Do we look at our moderns, modern wonders of civil disobedience? I don't know. Whom were they looking at? Were they more successful than the ancients? I mean, to the extent that Churchill was successful with the Nazi, he was an inheritor of something which was not modern. The rule of law was Roman.
The moderns are not. The
Yes.
moderns are not more successful, but that doesn't mean for me that the ancients were just right.
Just right. I was suggesting with
The
respect to understanding the limits of man, the natural limitations. To say that, for example, the problem of evil and injustice cannot be resolved in the hic et nunc, or as we would say historically. Huh? It cannot be. There's no political practical solution to that problem, which is isn't any.
Yes, but it isn't natural either that every uh, remains and stays as it is.
No, but welcome in Sodoma. Their answer to that is just, pursue the good. Episteme. Oh, it's difficult. Not everybody will be able to face that challenge. That's part of the situation. Okay. Episteme, knowledge, however that is to be understood. Knowledge of the good, communion with the good, anchorage in permanent features of reality, the ideas, fundamental problems of life, anchorage in that. And that will make you stronger. That will help you face evil without and help. And how do you face evil? Not by jumping into it and having a swim and empowering yourself, but in trading with the devil and in a Faustian manner, making compromises of the soul. No, by shunning it. And we have very beautiful images in the story of Buddha faced with Mara. We have images of Christ who is in the desert and he meets the snake and so forth. But we also have more ordinary examples in Cicero. We have ordinary examples throughout the centuries of men of integrity, men of character, men who faced with resilience evil without compromising and stood for the good. Oh, but that's a romantic no, in fact, not at all. It's not romanticism at all. It's not naive. It's something that I can relate to in my ordinary life. Is it difficult? Yes. Great challenge, something to live by. And I don't need the modern hope to live that life. I don't need irrational hope. I can stand by it. I can live that life here and now. As a psychologist, what do you say? I'm crazy.
Examples of a good life are valuable. Yes, I agree.
Yes. Do the ancients give us good examples?
There are many examples from all times.
Yes. But I would say that the more recent ones that are valuable are in harmony with the principles of classical antiquity. They're not relying
of
classical antiquity. They're not relying upon the revolution that I was referring to, namely reliance on the machine as opposed to virtue. They don't go for that. They don't accept that. Matthew Arnold, good man.
You want to say that human values were created in the axial age?
In the exile age?
Yes. Jasper's expression, axial.
Axel age. Oh, yes.
Axel.
Yeah. No. But that the good life was recognized in classical antiquity, yes. That the good life for the human being was recognized and upheld and lived in that age and later by others, yes. But we can discuss this further, perhaps in a second session.
They fled so